What does the birth of Jesus Christ mean to you personally?
It means that God sent the best Christmas present ever.
Welcome back to For All the Saints, and my guest today, James. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate you joining me for this very special Christmas episode. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you, Ben, and thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. And I thought I'd ask an appropriate. In fact, I was going to, just because my background and my appearance looks so un-Christmassy compared to you. This is sort of green as a festive colour, but I did experiment.
Oh yeah, I'll go for it. That's the stuff. Yeah.
It sort of makes me lose bits of hair and an ear here and there, but maybe I should stick with this. But your website is brilliant. I encourage everyone to go to it. It's Why Christmas, and let that be my first question to you, James. Is why Christmas? Why did you go to the effort of creating all of these brilliant resources to help us understand Christmas more?
Yeah, well, it's something that I kind of never intended to do, and it just sort of happened. It started back in the year 2000. I was just starting to get into designing sites back then. And I had some friends who were primary school teachers at a school in London. And they came and said to me, because it's sort of the birth of the web at this time, why can't we find a child-safe and friendly site with information about Christmas that isn't trying to sell them something? Because back then, you had the likes of Nickelodeon and Disney that had kids' sites with information on, but basically they just wanted to sell their stuff to the kids. So being a big kid myself and loving Christmas, I thought, that'd be fun. I'll find out a bit more about Christmas and then it'll give me some experience and I'll make a little site for school. Little did I imagine that 23 years later, it would now take up most of my December. I would be the Christmas expert coming and talking to lovely people like you, and that my little site would become the biggest Christmas information site on the web.
23 years of it. That's fantastic. And it just is a very good, high-quality website. And if people watching have any questions about Christmas, you can basically have answers to even the most obscure elements of Christmas will be covered there. I had some Christmas quickfire questions.
Oh dear, here we go. Yep.
Yeah. And it's about personal preferences. So,
right, sure.
What is your favourite Christmas hymn?
In the Bleak Midwinter.
Ooh, why?
It's not sort of quite theologically accurate, but the sentiment's lovely. It's, what can we do now to prepare ourselves for Christmas and for Jesus? And also either tune that it's sung to are just lovely. So yeah, that really puts me in the mood whenever I hear that one.
Yes, it is a really nice tune. Favorite Christmas song? Non-hymn song.
Right, well, yeah, I've got over 460 Christmas albums in my collection, so kind of choosing Christmas music is slightly challenging. I love an album. Can I go for a whole album rather than a song?
Of course.
There's an album called Lester Lanning's Christmas Dance Party. You can get it on Amazon, and it's available places like that. It's like from the 60s, I think, but imagine like Glenn Miller playing Christmas tunes at 1,000 miles an hour. That's basically it, and it goes on for like 45 minutes of relentless Christmas dance music, and if that doesn't get your toe tapping, nothing will.
Christmas music on steroids. What is your favorite Christmas tradition?
Again, lots of my stuff is related to music. A very strong memory as a kid was my dad used to come home from work. He used to finish work at lunchtime on Christmas Eve, and then he'd generally fall asleep listening to 9 Lessons and Carols on the radio. So that's always sort of like the mark of Christmas to me, sort of, 3 o'clock, Christmas Eve afternoon, 9 Lessons and Carols, away we go.
Oh, brilliant. That's a very wholesome tradition. I love 9 Lessons and Carols, and I love going to midnight mass as well. It's probably my favourite thing we do at Christmas.
Yeah.
What is, to you, the best part of the Christmas dinner?
Oh, well, I love all of it. I am partial to a Brussels, though, I have to say.
Really?
I'll eat Brussels all day long, all the year. That's fine with me. Yeah, bring on the Brussels.
Oh, I had never expected that. I thought, pigs in blankets or something. But
Oh, yeah, I mean, they're up there, but there's so much hate going around for Brussels that I think they need a bit of defending sometimes.
oh, see, I think the hate is deserved. Unless
Oh,
there is a way of shredded and creamed sprouts are really nice. But if they're just like golf balls on the table, not a fan. But okay, fake tree or real tree? Maybe controversial.
I'm a fake. I'm a fake all the way, I'm afraid.
I've always been.
I've had my one for several years, so it sort of makes up for it. It will last a long time.
My family is fake Christmas tree. Just it had a wonderful smell to it. I don't know if that was like the attic smell or something, but just whenever it came out, you knew it was Christmas now when you could smell the tree. And do you put a star or an angel on the top of the tree?
I have a star. Yep, I'm a star.
Nice. Just some fun quick-fire questions to get us started. And I've decided, because it keeps annoying me that my chin goes out of time, out of picture, that I'm just going to get rid of my Christmas background.
Right,
Sorry, everyone. I'm a Scrooge. But going into the actual details, the nitty-gritty of Christmas, is Christmas, as we know it on December the 25th, actually pagan? And if it is, should we be celebrating it as Christians? I've heard even that some consider a Christmas tree to be an idol.
Yeah.
What do you...
Right. I've had lots of people ask me that over the years. And generally, I would define pagan. What's pagan? If you say anything else other than anything that's Christian is pagan, well, do you use the days of the week? Do you use the months of the year? Today is a Tuesday. That's the day that was dedicated to Tuor, who was an old Roman god. Do you have Wednesday? That's Woden's day. So, to me, I celebrate it. Yes, there are some elements that are associated with pre-Christian things, like lots of the greenery and arguably trees. But when you look at more of the history, there's far more Christian stuff actually woven through Christmas than you'd think that there would be. The dating, lots of, Jesus wasn't born on December the 25th. No, he wasn't. He was probably born in late September, early October at the Feast of Tabernacles. But the date of December the 25th comes from the early church trying to work out actually when Jesus died rather than when he was born. They were trying to work out when to celebrate Easter, and they bundled on to the 25th of March. And they also then thought back then that you died and you were either born or conceived on the same day. So you get March the 25th, you take 9 months onto it, you get December the 25th. So that's actually where it came from. It wasn't stolen from the Romans. You hear lots of they just took over the Roman Saturnalia. Well, the whole Saturnalia thing's a bit weird because it was actually later than that. It was sort of a New Year festival. And you also get the argument, it was the birthday of Tammuz, it was the birthday of Mithras, and it was the birthday of Hormuz, and it was the birthday of all of these old gods. Well, most of that is from some very dodgy Victorian history. It mainly down to a guy called Alexander Hislop, who was a Church of Scotland priest and basically hated anything to do with Catholicism. So he pulled out this leaflet called The Two Babylons, where he basically tried to connect anything to do with Catholicism, Christmas, Easter, anything, back to old Babylonian religions. Where he either grossly misunderstood the archaeology of the day, and or he made a load of stuff up just to suit his beliefs. So he connected all of, he said that Yule logs were obviously going back to Babylonian things because in Iranian culture, the winter solstice, the 21st of December, is called Yalda night. So he went, aha, Yalda, Yule, they must be the same word. They got nothing to do with each other. So him saying, Christmas trees are clearly the work of the devil. No. And the other thing about Christmas trees are the work of the devil is the quote from Jeremiah. But Jeremiah isn't talking about worshipping trees. He's talking about people that chop down trees and turn them into idols. So again, that's completely different. The earliest Christmas trees probably actually came from what are called paradise trees. And they were used December the 24th, traditionally in the church, was the day of Adam and Eve. And you had in the Middle Ages, in Britain and across Europe, they would put on mystery plays, i.e. stories from the Bible, outside the large churches and cathedrals on December the 24th. And paradise trees were basically branches or pyramids of wood that had apples and other things like that put on them to represent the tree in the Garden of Eden. And they were sometimes paraded around the town of the morning of the play to sort of advertise that it was happening. That was sort of the 1300s. Then in the late 14 to 1500s, in what's now Germany, northern Germany, Estonia and Latvia, because they're all sort of linked by along the sea there, you get some sort of the early versions of the Rotary Club putting up big trees, or they might have been maypole type things in town squares at Christmas to represent trees. And then the story of it being brought into the home seems to have happened in the Germany around 1500-ish. And a lot of the credit goes to Martin Luther, the Reformation preacher, who supposedly was walking through the forest one day and saw the stars shining down through the sky and onto the trees. And it reminded him of Jesus coming down to heaven. So he brought a tree into the house and put candles on it to represent the stars. So that's sort of potted history of the Christmas tree. So you come back to all of these things. Yes, there are some pagan elements to it, but define pagan, and then the more you weave into it, actually the more history there is, the more Christianity stuff there is actually in all of our traditions.
That's so fascinating. So even the part with the Yule logs, it sort of makes me wonder now if I ever have a Colin the Caterpillar from M&S, if I'm devil worshipping or something.
Well, yeah, I mean, the word Yule itself, it probably refers to like the Nordic winter festivals, because nobody wrote anything down. The actually earliest documentation of the word Yule is from about 300 AD. So we don't actually know what they did. It could have been that Yule was just their name for what we call December. It could have been their midwinter festival. It could have been their word for winter. We don't actually know.
Right. So considering that we didn't really hijack Christmas and took it as our own Christian festival, when did we actually start calling it Christmas or associating it that sort of midwinter festival with?
The early church was sort of trying to work out date things as back as sort of the 100s, 200s, and around the sort of the 220s into the 300s, they were definitely trying to work these things around about when Jesus was conceived, because that's what they wanted. And then sort of the birth things of that got bolted onto the back of it. And
right.
It so happened to be that, of course, you get the Jewish Festival of Lights, Hanukkah, which is on at the moment as we record this. And that's on the 25th of Kislev, which, you know, also fits in as another 25th date. So that was, and for the Jews in the early church, that was another time of light and of good things that they could bolt onto the 25th date. Although December and Kislev don't quite line up, it's another coincidence that helped it sort of get put on that date. So yeah, it's sort of around the early 300s, early mid 300s is when it got known as sort of celebrating the birth of Jesus in mid-December.
Right. I want to go further back to the actual, what we consider the point of Christmas, which is the birth of Christ, and specifically the nativity scene that we all know and love, and we put up in our houses with little wooden blocks. How accurate is that scene that we've come to be so familiar with?
It depends what you've got in it. If they're in a stable, it's probably wrong. If you've got an innkeeper, it's probably wrong. If you've got a donkey in it, well, that belongs to the infancy gospels. And if you've got a donkey, you should have some dragons and leopards as well.
Wait, dragons?
Yeah. Yeah, okay, we'll take them one by one. Jesus probably wasn't born in a stable. The word inn, where it says there was no room for them in the inn. So everybody goes, well, they went into a stable.
Yeah.
The word inn is doing a lot of heavy lifting. That was a bad translation in the King James version of the Bible way back when. The word inn should be guest room. It refers to the room, the type of room where the Last Supper happened. So basically, the theory is Jesus was probably born at tabernacles, i.e. the time when loads of Jews went to Jerusalem. And people also, historically, at tabernacles in Jewish faith, it reminds them of the time in Exodus, and you camp out in tents or tabernacles. And so loads of people would have been in Jerusalem for the festival, and so there was no room in the guest room. So where did they sleep? Well, they slept in the house with the animals, because that's what houses looked like in that time. You had a mezzanine level where you slept, but during the day, you lived on the ground floor of the house. And at night, especially during the autumn and winter, you brought the animals in, and they spent the night on the ground floor of the house. There's like a central heating, and you slept up on mezzanine level. So they had to sleep with the animals, and they put Jesus in the manger because it just was there and convenient. And reading it through like first century Jewish eyes, everybody would have gone, oh yeah, of course they did. It's not a surprise. The stable and the cave, which are the two other theories, because there was no room for them in the inn, they come from the infancy Gospels, which were sort of written around the 200 to 300 to 400 to 500 time, and they became very popular in the medieval period because there were some great stories in them. They're sort of, great folk tales, and they really embellished some of the early life of Jesus. And it's in a couple of those that Mary has Jesus in a cave. Initially, she gives birth in a cave, and then they move into a stable a few days later. And when they get to the stable, that's when the ox and the ass supposedly bow down and worship Jesus. So it's from that the medieval artists got hold of the stable and the ox and the ass and things like that. But while they were staying in the cave, before they got to the stable, apparently some leopards and even a dragon came along and bowed down and worshipped. But you don't see many of them in the nativity plays.
Just breathed some fire to keep the baby warm.
Yeah.
Wow, so that's very interesting. So it wasn't, as I've recalled, an ancient travelodge or motel. I mean, that they were
well, and those sort of things were known in the Greek period, in the Greek world, but that sort of motel wasn't really a thing in Jewish times. You just stayed with your family, and you would have had enough cousins and vague relatives that even if you were like third or fourth cousins, you would have known each other, and you would have just stayed with your family. So to actually have them staying out in a shelter or in an inn somewhere would have actually been a massive insult to their family, that they weren't staying with the family.
Right. Oh, I see. And the manger, is it this sort of foldable wooden box that everyone
have been, or it might have just been sort of a trough-shaped dip that was like carved into a niche in the wall where they put some straw in for the animal at night. There's another intriguing theory that I'm not quite sure about, but it's an interesting theory called the Migdalida theory. And that's that there was a town called a tower called Migdalida, which was where the shepherds stayed when they were out looking in the sheep. It's like a watchtower for keeping an eye on the sheep. And there's one theory that Jesus was actually born in this tower because in the tower they had a dip that was known as the manger in the floor where they put the lambs to inspect them to see that they were perfect before they went off to the Jewish temple. So one theory is that Jesus as a baby was laid in the ceremonial manger of spotless lambs.
Wow, that would be interesting, wouldn't it? That would be quite profound. That would fulfill what Micah said as well, right? What's his prophecy about being born in the tower of the?
Yes, well, that's sort of where some of it's come from. But I think the staying in the guest room is more likely and sleeping with the animals. But it's an intriguing theory, and it gives you another insight that the shepherds sort of understood what was happening. They would have got some of the cues.
Right. Yeah, there's sort of some poetic niceness to that theory too, in that obviously the lamb, the precious lamb, and the sacrificial lamb, and
Mm.
well, speaking of that, actually, because you've brought that up, and um, even if he wasn't born there, there was something about the shepherds that we perhaps overlook. Am I right in that, with those sort of special
Yeah,
flocks with
a
it? Not
lot of the
flocks,
shepherds around Bethlehem supplied the sheep for the temple. So when they'd been told that the Messiah was born, they would have taken their sheep into the temple and said, "Hey, something really mad happened to us the other night." And so that's possibly how the likes of Anna and Simeon knew that something had happened. So when Jesus was taken to the temple, they were looking out for this special family because the news had travelled around from the shepherds that, something special was happening.
Right, I see. And so we picture these shepherds as sort of lowly and maybe impoverished, and perhaps not, sort of the outcasts, maybe, the shepherds in their fields over there outside of the city. But does this, because they were supplying these kinds of sheep and lambs, were they quite important in the area? And
No one's really sure. They were probably on the lower end of society, but they weren't sort of the dregs. And certainly if they were if they were the temple shepherds, they were a level up from like the average shepherds. Yeah, it's the sort of you've got the wise men at one end and the shepherds at the other. That was sort of more of a Victorian moral equivalency thing that was brought in. But if you look at it historically, the shepherds probably weren't as bad as they were portrayed in some accounts.
right, I love the idea though of the shepherds who reared and delivered the sacrificial lambs to the temple were led to, God's own sacrificial lamb, and then went, we know, and spread that news abroad as well, and to the temple.
Yeah.
I think there's something quite nice and profound about that. One other question I had while we're on the nativity scene is, did Mary actually ride on a donkey, or is that also stuff?
Well, yeah, again, the donkey, there's no record in the Bible of donkey. She probably did, because that was like the common way of traveling. But Mary riding on a donkey, again, was as a thing, was introduced in the infancy Gospels. But she probably did, because that's how you moved around Israel back then. But, it's not in the canonical scriptures, shall we say.
Right. See, I've got this wonderful childlike view of the nativity story based on the 70s Christmas Disney classic Small One. I don't know if you've seen this, but we watched it recently, and it's a really nice, wholesome story. It's like 20 minutes long. If anyone hasn't seen it, Google Disney Small One, and it'll make you Christmas. And it's about the donkey. And hopefully there's, it's not completely false. But with regards to Matthew and Luke, who tell the nativity story in them, what are some key differences we should note between how Matthew was writing the nativity and Luke?
Yeah, well, Matthew was writing for the Jews, and Luke was more writing. Matthew was more writing for the Jews, and Luke was writing for the Greeks. So Matthew was trying to tell the story of the kingship. So that's why the Magi come. So the Magi are in Matthew, and the shepherds are in Luke. That's the two differences. And also the Magi and the shepherds would have never met, because the Magi turned up a couple of years later.
Yes.
Hence that's why we have Epiphany, which is on the 6th of January, because that celebrates the Magi coming, and the baptism of Jesus, because Epiphany means revelation. And in the some Eastern and Coptic churches, they celebrate the Nativity and the Epiphany at the same time, because they all see it as one revelation, which is quite interesting. So yeah, they were writing for slightly different audiences and emphasizing different bits of Jesus's life. So that's why you get the different parts of the story coming in.
Right, I see. Now, Christmas is much more about the nativity for me. It interests me far more than the commercial side of Christmas, but we have to delve into it. Well, do you think our Christmases are becoming less Christ focused year on year? What are
Yes,
you witnessing?
definitely. Yeah. I think it's definitely. I mean, I grew up in the 80s, and yeah, you had adverts for toys on the telly and stuff, but nothing to the level that we do now. And also, I think another change in the last 5-10 years is that it's become more commercialized before Christmas gets going because we've imported Black Friday. Because when I was growing up, you had the Christmas stuff, but then you had the Boxing Day and January sales that sort of spread the commercialization out sort of on both sides. But now sort of Boxing Day sales have become Black Friday, so also everything's sort of shoved before Christmas, which is really weird because up until the Industrial Revolution, Christmas didn't start until December the 25th because you had Advent leading up to Christmas, which was the time of quiet and reflection. And then you got going in the 12 days of Christmas because that's what they were for.
Right. Okay. So when we're talking about Christmas becoming less focused, what I'm seeing is less carol singers, people doing less religious wise, which I don't know. It makes me.
I think it's.
sad.
I think it's our generation and possibly even the generation above that are just know less about it. They,
right.
You have the generation that didn't go to. Everyone didn't go to Sunday school of some kind. They might have done nativity plays at school, but that was the extent of their exposure to it. And certainly the generations that are coming up now, it's just a folk tale to if that. And the guy with the red suit, who I am dressed up in, has become the figure of Christmas rather than anything religious.
Yeah, and I suppose a massive part of that could be that, what's the point of the Christmas story if you don't know why Jesus Christ is important and, what he did later on. It's all good that he was born, but why was he born? You have to learn that a separate story, and perhaps there's not enough going into that element of things.
I think it's basically religious illiteracy across the board of basically all religions these days. We used to be a Christian country, but I think we're just a secular one now, and that knowledge is just sort of is almost vanishing.
I was having a rant recently about when I receive Christmas cards that say Merry Xmas, and you've taken Christ's name out, but then I was informed that I was wrong about that. Could you tell me why?
Yeah, you pronounce it Christmas, although it's X, because basically medieval monks wrote X as shorthand for Christ, because when they were copying out manuscripts and they had to write Christ a lot, because in the Greek for Jesus Christ, the X is one of the main letters, so they just used it as shorthand. And so if you see an Xmas, you should say Christmas because the X is just shorthand for Christ.
I never knew that. That is a first. I'll have to repent of my ranting, because it always used to be like, I can't believe you would offend God by taking the Christ out of Christmas, but I was just pronouncing it wrong. Now, you are dressed as a massive figure of Christmas, perhaps arguably a bigger figure in Christmas than even Christ in today's world. But who actually is Santa Claus?
Yeah, well, he was a bishop. He was St. Nicholas, who was a bishop in the 4th century in a city called Myra in what's now southern Turkey. The stories are that he came from a Christian family and he was orphaned as a young boy and came into quite a wealth. And he was known for his gift giving and his generosity. And the main legend, which stitches together lots of the Santa elements that we have, this was going sort of early medieval time. This legend was that St. Nicholas lived in a village, and in the village there was a family with 3 daughters, and they were coming of age, but they were a poor family and didn't have the money for a dowry to allow the girls to marry, which means they'd either have to go into servanthood or even worse, prostitution. So when the first daughters came of age, Nicholas either threw in through the window or dropped in through the window or dropped in down the chimney a bag of gold, which landed in the shoes by the window or the stocking hanging up to dry by the fire. And so he did this for the first daughter and the second daughter. And by the third daughter, the father was getting a bit, hello, what's going on here? So he stayed up at night and caught St. Nicholas doing it. And then the gift-giving prowess of St. Nicholas became known around Europe. And he became in the parts of Belgium and the Netherlands and bits of neighbouring Germany and France, what's now, he was known as Sinterklaas from St. Nicholas and became sort of the medieval gift bringer. And then when those immigrants went over to the States, they took their stories of Sinterklaas with them. And the story sort of died out until the early 1700s. And then the late 1700s, and the likes of Washington Irving started trying to find some of the early American folk tales. And so he sort of resurrected Sinterklaas, but the then Americans couldn't get their tongue around Sinterklaas. So he became Santa Claus.
That's how it happened. I was going to ask how that happened.
Yeah. And the red outfit is from the bishop's robes. Lots of people, you might hear the urban legend of Coke invented Santa in his red outfit. No, Coke nicked the already red outfit and went, oh, red and white, that fits our brand. Let's put Santa holding a Coke bottle.
You're joking. So I always thought it was Santa Claus wore a green outfit and then Coca-Cola wanted to...
He wore lots of different outfits, but some of the earliest drawings of him in America in the 1820s, he's definitely wearing red, long before Coke was the thing. Coke sort of cemented him into red and white, but they certainly didn't invent it.
That was another misconception. See, if you're watching this, you're getting a lot of value out of today's episode.
And one of the lesser known facts about St. Nicholas is that he punched a heretic as well. He was at the Council of Nicaea in 325 where they decided the Nicene Creed. And there were some people that had some slightly interesting views there. And there's a story that he got up and thumped one of them and was defrocked from a bishop for a few years until there was such a public outcry that he had to be reinstated.
Santa Claus is a G, it sounds like.
Yeah.
A real strong, faithful man. That's fantastic. Santa Claus, wow. How about other traditions surrounding Christmas, such as, actually, we have quite a big American audience. And obviously here in the UK, we celebrate Boxing Day the day after Christmas. Could you give us the history of when Boxing Day started and what it originally meant before we had this sort of awful Boxing Day tales?
It's the Feast of Stephen, St. Stephen's Day. So good King Wenceslas went to look out on the Feast of Stephen when the snow was round about deep and crisp and even. And of course, that carol gives you a potted history of Boxing Day, although it was written in Victorian times, because it's about the rich helping out the poor on St. Stephen's Day. And that's where Boxing Day comes from. Because in the medieval times...
Stephen, do you mean the Stephen that was, the first martyr?
Yes, there are two Stephens. There's who shared the day. There's that one, and then there's a later one. And the later one was associated with animals, and particularly horses, which is why hunts and horse racing are a particular thing on Boxing Day as well, because it was the feast of that Stephen. So St. Stephen's Day was a time of charity giving. And during the Middle Ages and up to Victorian times, it was you went to Christmas services as a rich person and you put money in the poor alms boxes, and then they were opened traditionally on Boxing Day. The poor box was opened on Boxing Day and then shared out among the parish so people could buy food for the 12 days of Christmas. And then it became during the Georgian and Victorian times, it was the time when Christmas boxes were then given out to the staff on the estates, and even people like postmen and dustmen and things got their Christmas boxes on Boxing Day. Contrary to what some Americans think, it's not the day when you take boxes back to the store for the presents that you don't like.
Americans and their commercialization, eh? What is some of your favourite Christmas traditions that happen globally in different countries?
Okay,
Are
well,
they actually very different?
yeah, some are very different indeed. We can start with a curious American one, which, well, it's sort of half American, supposedly half American, half German. It's meant to be the ancient German tradition of the Christmas pickle, i.e., gherkin. Yeah, there was a
I've
story that
never-
started in the early 1900s in America that in Germany there was this ancient tradition that the ornament of a pickle or gherkin was the last thing hung on the Christmas tree, and then the children would hunt to find it, and whoever found it got a prize. Or there was another story that there was a soldier in the American Civil War that this was this great thing about him having a pickle, and it was all very romantic and things. But if you ask anyone in Germany, do you have a Christmas pickle on your tree? They will just look completely blank at you. Because it seems that when the likes of Woolworths in the States in the 1880s first imported German glass decorations, they came over in all sorts of shapes like apples and pears and peaches and bells and stars and things like that. And there were some pickles. But of course, nobody in their right mind wants a pickle hanging on their Christmas tree. So nobody bought them. So someone came up with the legend of the Christmas pickle as a way to get rid of the stock that he got left over.
Oh gosh, how about some from like the far-flung, completely different?
Japan is an interesting one because, of course, that's a country that has no or very little historic connection with Christianity. So in Japan, Christmas isn't actually a public holiday, but it's more like our Valentine's Day. It's sort of a day as when couples will go for a romantic walk and look at all the Christmas tree lights and the twinkliness, and it's all rather lovely, heading in because it's sort of a forerunner to their main New Year winter festival, which is their big thing. And you go and look at the pretty lights, and then you queue up for your pre-booked bucket of KFC because that's what you eat for Christmas in Japan. And it comes out of when KFC really started marketing in the 70s, when there were a load of American Army and Air Force over there. And because they wanted their KFC. So in 74, KFC Japan came up with this slogan, which is Kentucky for Christmas, which in the Japanese, which I will not attempt to pronounce, is sort of quite a funny sort of pun on Christmas and Kentucky. It works in Japanese. And that since 74, it just sort of stuck and it became the thing. And also most people don't realize that they're walking around with Japanese Christmas cake in their pocket, because on the emojis that you'll have on your phone, there's one called shortcake, which looks like a sponge cake with cream in the middle and a strawberry on the top. And that's Japanese Christmas cake.
Oh, right, is it? Oh, gosh. So we have learned that about the Christmas pickle and KFC on Christmas Day.
Yeah,
to be fair, I quite fancy KFC on a Christmas evening. That would be quite nice.
Yeah. And if you head on over to Catalonia, it kind of gets even more surreal, because on the 8th of December in Catalonia, children will start feeding what is known as the Christmas log, or more colloquially, the pooping log. Imagine a bit of wood that looks like Thomas the Tank Engine. It's sort of a log of wood with a Thomas the Tank Engine front face on it, and it's got a red hat, kind of like a Santa, but it's a Catalonian peasant's hat. It's a sort of a red cap, and it has a blanket out covering its bottom. And from the 8th of December, which is the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, which is when lots of Catholic countries sort of start putting their Christmas decorations up and stuff, you feed the pooping log all the goodies that you want to eat come Christmas. And then on Christmas Eve, you sing the pooping log a special song and hit it with a stick. And then normally the parents will reach in and start pulling out the poop, and it will poop out all of the goodies that you fed it during December. And then when you get an onion or some garlic, that means that the sweets have all come out, and then that's it. But these are all the sweets that you can then enjoy up to Epiphany, which is when Spanish kids get their main presents.
I'm starting to think that I feel all right about the UK Christmas celebrations if this is what other countries are doing.
Well, I do actually have a pooping log under my tree. I tried to import a proper one from Catalonia, but it cost a fortune. So I made my own, and it does get some questions, I have to say.
I think we should bring that over to the UK. We should start a petition. I may go and get a pooping log for before Christmas Day, so that we can enjoy especially the bit that sounds particularly exciting is being able to find the onion or garlic at the end. That's a special treat. Now we've done our segment now about modern Christmas and all of the strange and wonderful things that occur in that, and things around the world. And I want to bring our sort of final bit of our chat today back to faith and Christianity. And I think mainly we have so much time around Christmas that we don't take advantage of enough in the terms of, we have Advent for quite a long time, and then many Christians have and follow the 12 days of Christmas, followed by or ending with the Epiphany, and with Candlemas as well, going all the way up to sort of, is it February 2nd? Is it?
Yes.
Candlemas?
Yeah.
Right. And I'm wondering, what would you advise people listening of? And I know we're past most of Advent now, but for next year and future years too, what could we do to really take more advantage of that time that's given and sort of allotted to focusing on our faith and on Jesus Christ and other things of that nature?
It can be a tough one because sort of, there are so many pressures around Christmas. Be it things for kids, school events, church events, community events, making sure you got the right shopping in, get the presents wrapped and all of that. But I do think it's good just to take some time, listen to a carol or two, read the Christmas story before we get to Christmas, find an Advent devotional that sort of marks the leading up, perhaps looking through some of the old prophets, that mark the way towards Christmas. Just try and take a bit of time out, really. And also have the time afterwards as well. Make it last up to Candlemas. Candlemas is the celebration of when Jesus was presented in the temple. And it's called Candlemas because it was traditionally the Catholic and Anglican church service where they blessed the candles that would be used for the next year during the services. So again, it's another time of light. So in that dark period, January is normally fairly dark and miserable. Try and take some time to just have some space and have some light. And the Christmas period lasts until February the 2nd. So, go and listen to some carols a bit late. You might get some odd looks, but go for it.
That's a great message. And if our listeners could take away one message from you of what you want them to know about Christmas, what would that be?
Make Christmas last all year. Me and Christmas nuts like me, we do things on every 25th to try and sort of spread it out through the year. So, yeah, give that a go. Make Christmas last all year. Make it a time of joy. Remember that, Jesus is with us every day. We don't have to put him in a little Christmas parcel and a little Easter parcel. Remember why Jesus came every day of the year.
How would you advise going about that? What have you found successful?
Well, I've got some little nativity scenes that stay up all year. I've got a little Christmas tree that stays up all year, just to give me just little visual reminders. Say, oh yeah, I listen to some Christmas music on the 25th of every month, but I've got a stupid amount of it, so I kind of need to give everything a listen. But you'll get some odd looks. But if you explain that you're just trying to spread the joy of Christmas out, lots of people say, oh, that's quite nice.
Yeah. I think definitely I like the idea of that, with sort of having things that can prick your memory about it. We speak so much about Jesus's life and especially death and resurrection, and then there's only one time in the year where we remember his birth, and so why not have things that symbolize that and remember it throughout the year, as long as I don't have to listen to Wizard and Slade throughout the year, the more annoying Christmas songs that I only have to endure for a little while. And my final question, James, is what does the birth of Jesus Christ mean to you personally?
It means that God sent the best Christmas present ever, basically.
That's a wonderful way to put it, and a great way to end. James, thank you so much for joining me today in all of your Christmas attire, to shed light on the most wonderful time of the year, as it's been said. And very Merry Christmas to you, and please, everyone, go and check out Why Christmas and share it. You will learn so much on there. We've literally touched a small fraction of what's on there. I mean, the history of LED lights on your Christmas tree, so many little obscure bits that just enhance the season. But Merry Christmas, James.
Happy Christmas, Ben, and to all of the viewers and listeners.
Thanks for watching For All the Saints. This show needs your help to grow. Please like the video, comment your thoughts, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone you think would enjoy it. Thank you.